Hi everyone, Lior is here with another Jumpstart Lightning episode, and we are continuing our nuts and bolts video series with Azure Arc-enabled servers and extensions. Stay tuned. Hi everyone, Lior is here with another Jumpstart Lightning episode, and we are continuing our nuts and bolts video series for Azure Arc-enabled servers and extensions. I have Ryan with me. How are you doing, sir?
I'm very well, Lior. Thanks for having me.
Ryan, for those who don't know you, who you are and what is it that you do?
Yeah, I'm a product manager on the Azure Arc team here at Microsoft, and I focus on the Azure Arc-enabled servers product.
So Ryan, in our previous nuts and bolts video that we did, we talked about the metadata service. And this is part of bringing together all the components that are creating Azure Arc-enabled server inside Azure Resource Manager. And obviously, there's a lot of components. There's a lot of services that are involved around that. And today, you're here to talk to me about the extensions model. So with that, talk to me. What is the extension model?
Yeah, so once you get Azure Arc connected on your machine, the next step is probably to go and enable one or more Azure services on that machine so you can get monitoring or security, governance features, whatever it is you're looking for from the Azure services. Extensions are really the way that we push down extra functionality to those machines. And if you're familiar with extensions on Azure VMs, we took the same exact thing and made it available outside of Azure with Azure Arc.
So Ryan, in the diagram that you're showing me, obviously extensions is right there at the bottom. And I think that extensions is really where Azure Arc-enabled servers are starting to get into the value proposition conversation. This is where things are becoming real, because extensions is what allows you to use those Azure Arc-enabled servers with other services, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think the real power of extensions is an extension itself is really just a wrapper around some kind of software or script or installer. So we think about things like the monitoring agent or a security agent for Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Extensions provide an API in Azure that you don't have to be on the machine or in the same network. And you can say, I have a server running somewhere. Can you please make sure that it's being monitored? And when you make that request to go and install an extension, our agent then picks up that request, and the extension manager says, oh, great, I know where the monitoring agent is. Let me go grab it, and I'll install it and configure it just the way you asked, and then report back to Azure whether or not that was successfully completed. So it's a very cloud-native way of managing these extra capabilities and agents on your server that now works for all of your machines, no matter where they are.
And Ryan, I like how you put it as a wrapper on top of some sort of a software installation package or some sort of a script or an automation. Because when I'm talking to customers about Azure Arc-enabled servers, one of the things that always comes up is this notion of how do you actually provide that experience of what you have today with Azure VMs, but having the same experience with Azure Arc-enabled servers. And I think that extensions, and by this fact of this wrapping all these automations and package management and all this type of stuff, that's really where things, like I said, becoming real, because you're starting to deploy value add on top of those servers, but we are providing you with a way to do that without you need to think about all these automations and scripting and all the things that are involved around that.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's go take a look at one of those servers we have. So if I head over to the Azure portal and look at my list of Arc resources, we can go grab, let's try this machine, the Windows Server 2019 machine. And you'll see here, if we head over to extensions, here's the list of extra capabilities that are currently installed on my server. Like any other software, extensions get versioned. And one of the best parts of having extensions to go manage these agents is you can opt them into automatic extension upgrades. So as we release new security and quality updates to these software packages, you can let Azure orchestrate getting that updated across all of your servers. And this is a capability that extends to both Azure VMs and those Arc servers running outside of Azure.
Ryan, are there any limitations to the amount of extensions you can deploy on an Azure Arc-enabled server?
Great question. And the restriction around extensions is you can have one extension per extension type. And so by that, I mean, each extension is declared and published as a package. And it's like, there's a monitoring package, there's a custom script package to run arbitrary scripts. You can have one of each of those on your machine at a time. So if you have, say 50 extensions out there, you can have all 50 installed simultaneously. If you install multiple at a time, we will sequence the installs. So a really critical part to know about Arc is when you install extensions, we cap the extension installation process to 5% of your CPU. We don't want to disrupt what's happening on your server. So if you give us like 3 extensions in a row that you want on these machines, we'll go ahead and do them one by one, and we'll only use up to 5% of the CPU during that process to make sure that the server runs smoothly. And eventually you'll get to that state of consistency with all the things you want on that machine.
The performance aspect is something that at least I'm getting a lot of questions around. Hey, when you guys are deploying the agent, does it impact the performance of the machine? So I think this capping that you're referring to is something that is super important, because that really ensures that things are not getting interrupted and you have this seamless experience. So Ryan, what is happening when you're installing an extension behind the scenes?
Yeah, let's do a quick demo here. We'll take the custom script extension, and I'm using the portal. You'll see there's 3 extensions here. There's actually a bunch more extensions that work with Arc, but many of them are enabled through different experiences. So some of them get enabled through Defender, some of them get enabled through Monitor. This is just kind of the simple experience for those select set of extensions. But with our APIs and policy, you can really pick and choose a bunch of different things. But for custom script, I'm just going to grab a script in my storage account. All the script does is it says, hey, I ran at this time and I ran on this machine. And I'm going to say, please go download and run that script on my server. And you'll see here it says deployment in progress. What's happening now is first, the extension gets queued on the Arc server resource. And the queuing process is important because this sometimes can cause a little bit of confusion. We will hold a request to install or update or delete an extension for up to 6 hours. And if your Arc server's online, we're going to grab that pretty much immediately and start working on that request. But if your server was offline, we will pick it up as soon as we're back online and connected to the service. If those 6 hours lapse and the server was offline maybe for a week, or maybe it's no longer functional at all, we'll just get rid of that request and say, oh, try again later. Looks like that server was not ready to pick up that request.
Got it.
But in this case, this server is now working on that. So on the extension manager, if we head back to the diagram, the extension manager gets this request, says, hey, I need to install this extension with these settings. The settings in this case was, here's the script we want to use and the URI for it. And it downloads the custom script extension, it installs it, and then it enables it. And that is where it actually says, hey, go do your magic. And for each extension, it could be a very different experience. For the monitoring agent, that means start monitoring. For custom script extension, it means go run that script. And so it will go and complete that process. And as soon as it is finished running whatever it takes to prove that it is installed successfully and it is up and running, it will then return back to Azure a status code that tells us either, yes, this was successful, or no, it was not. And here's an error message of why it did not succeed.
And obviously also upgrades are possible, right? Depends on the extensions and what is possible with that specific extensions. So upgrades also possible, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Same exact process for upgrades. With those automatic extension upgrades, for example, the Azure platform is making a request and it says, hey, it's time to upgrade that extension, a new version's out. Request comes through, goes down to the server, and it goes and installs just the latest version, reapplies the settings, and off it goes.
What happens when you are, you have an Azure Arc-enabled servers. Now you're starting to work with extensions. You have a bunch of extensions like the one you're just showing, custom script extension. But what is happening when you are uninstalling the agent, the Arc agent from the server? What is happening behind the scenes in the context of extensions?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that, because this is one of those point of confusions that comes up sometimes. Arc is responsible for installing, updating, and deleting extensions. But if you get rid of Arc, those extensions may still be there on your server in, I guess, a state that may not be easily managed. So in our documentation, we always have guidance to, if you're going to uninstall Arc, get rid of the extensions first, and then get rid of Arc so that everything's in a nice clean state afterwards.
And I think it's important because a lot of the times when you're thinking about Azure Arc and specifically the agent, people tend to think that well, if we are Arc enabling that machine, that means that automatically we need to control everything. But the reality is that when someone is deploying extensions, there is a good reason why they're installing extensions. And sometimes they don't want to actually remove those from the servers. They just want to maybe re-onboard or onboard again that server to Azure Arc for whatever the reason that may be. So I think that it's important to clarify that this is why things are happening the way they are.
Absolutely. And one last thing I just want to show, I think it's really valuable, is the power of Resource Graph Explorer. If you haven't taken a look at this yet, I really recommend you do, because when you think about a fleet of servers, whether they're Arc-enabled or Azure VMs, you might want to figure out, what is the health of my environment? If I expect all of my servers to be sending logs up to monitor in Azure Sentinel, for example, we want to make sure that those extensions are installed and in a healthy state. And so this pretty simple query here is saying, find me all the Arc server extensions and tell me if auto upgrades are enabled and the state of those extensions. So if you're in that kind of IT role where you're trying to figure out, how are my machines doing? This is an awesome tool, because you can go do things like where the state is failed, and be able to pull back all the information you need here. And what did I do wrong? Oh, I need to put this into a string. Sorry, I was trying to be fancy, and sometimes being fancy is, what have I done? Oh,
that's okay. We like things to be unscripted.
Yes, this is proof that we did not script it. There we go. I forgot the keyword, where. But now I get a list of all those extensions on my servers that might need attention. And this could be someone maybe put in the wrong settings. Maybe they just put the wrong monitoring ID or something. It could be maybe there's antivirus software that blocked the install. But this is a great way to go find all that information and then go hunt down those servers that need to go get a little bit of extra attention.
And I want to connect the dots here for a second, because you're using Resource Graph and you're using those, to queries to find those resources that has extensions that are in whatever state that may be. In this case, it's failed extension. In the previous episode, when we talked about the notion of tags and we talked about doing fleet management and how do you actually do governance at scale, this is one of those areas that you can actually benefit out of tagging. Because if you, on all your servers that you have in your subscription, and obviously you have a lot, if you had, like, let's just say, for example, an Azure policy that applied those tags on top of those resources, what you were able to do is you were able to do these queries, but also query those based on conditional tags that are on your servers. So that adds an extra value, another layer of how do you actually do fleet management for different use cases. In this one, you query the state of the extension, but obviously this can be done for other type of queries and other states or status that you need to query against your Azure Arc-enabled servers.
Absolutely. Yep. You can build some beautiful dashboards just by combining information about the servers that are Arc-enabled and then kind of what you expect to be enabled on them via extensions or settings, whatever it happens to be.
Cool. So Ryan, we talked about extensions. We talked about what is it all about, and really extensions are where the value proposition of Azure Arc kicks in. This is how you are taking that Azure Arc-enabled servers that you just onboarded and making or deploying extensions on top of it, so we can interact with other services as part of the Azure platform. So extensions are super critical, super important when it comes to that. So for the audience and our viewers, the people that wants to really know when we're releasing another episode as part of the Nuts and Bolts video series, please make sure to subscribe and like this video. It helps support the channel and bring people like Ryan from the product to talk to me about everything that is Azure Arc and all the technologies that it involves. And as you can see, there is a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes when we are enabling these technologies. So Ryan, thank you so much for coming to the show and talk to me about Azure Arc-enabled servers and extensions.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you in the next episode.